So we saw that after the Tzimtzum Harishon Ba'erein Sei, what Shehoya B'Tchilo, we saw that the Erein Sei was Mamale, what we call the Mochim Ponui, and the Mochim Shel Amidus or Elamas. And after the Tzimtzum, when there occurs basically the vacuum of the Mochim Ponui, in which it now became possible, the Inyan of the Hisavus or Elamas, Yesh Miyayin from the Eibishter. So then there was Nimshach, the Eibishter was Megala on Mamshich a Kav Mutzumtzam. And we saw that the Inyan of that Kav was the Mishka Mido or Mishkal. And even though Chas V'Sholem we don't mean the concept of Mido or Mishkal, Lamaila. We mean the Inyan from Mido, meaning the concept of Gavul and limitation and Hakbola, and we saw that Mishkol is like the Inyan that even within one sphere, how much more so within the different spheres and the different elements, one to the other, different levels of Gilui of the Ein Seif, different forms and intensities of Gilui. And so we saw that that was all according to the Oifen of the Eilemas, what we'll see later on, that means according to the demands of the different kalim, the different receivers and the different vessels which have all the different Eilemas, sheyuchlu lekabel, that they should be able to receive, because if the Erein Seif would be meir like it was prior to the Inyan of the Tzimtzum, then there wouldn't be any possibility for any makabel or any oilam or kli to be makabel, and therefore there had to be the withdrawal of the light, which was the Tzimtzum, and then afterwards the reappearance of the light in the form of a limited and which we weighed or judged cow. And I brought down at the beginning of the great work of the Arizal, but that's the eighth time it's gone on, that the different works of the which are related to the Arizal, even though they're not from him because he didn't write anything, they're all written by the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital. So he wrote the famous work called the Eight Chaim, but that describes the whole Seder HaYishtalshelos. It's a very massive and major work in the description of the Kabbalah of the Arizal, when they get to all the Eilemas and all the different forms of the Gila, the Akusim Eilemas, and the Inyan of the Eilemas prior to Atzilus and then Atzilus, and then the Eilemas after Atzilus, the Eilemas of the created worlds of Bria, Yitzir, Asiya, and all those Inyanim. Those are all included in the general work called the Eight Chaim. So at the beginning of the Eight Chaim, well, there are two beginnings. So it's like a general beginning called the Shara Klali. Then there's a more specific opening to the whole work. That's what he means here in the beginning of the actual text of the Eight Chaim per se. So it's divided into literally branches, it's called Eight Chaim, so that it's divided into like sections or chapters, which at that particular point are called branches. And then later on it divides up into gateways and chapters and other inyanim as it goes along. So at the end of, at the beginning of the main entrance into the Eight Chaim, at the end of what's called branch 2, branch base, over there he writes that the whole Inyan, branch Gimel, he sums up the whole concept of the cow as bringing about this concept of Mido Mishkal, in order we should be able to have Oilemas, the klal, and that the Oilemas should be able to be Makabel, because had the oil in such being Meir like it was, then there wouldn't be any room, there was no possibility for anything to be Makabel, because it would all just be Botil and absorbed in the Ein Seif. Close Indian Akav, and the generality of this whole Indian of the Kav, Ula says Milo Umato, the Kamishkoso B.H. Chaim, the Onof Bates, and that's an Onof before the Onof which we just mentioned. And he said the generality of the concept of the Kav is to bring about the possibility that there should be a higher level and a lower level. Mila Umata, that abbreviation makes Mila Umata, as it's written in the same area over there, but in a previous branch, slightly previous to that other one we just mentioned, which is the Anaf Gimel. If you don't mind, put down here, like I don't like people going and playing on classes. Yeah, but Chilas is soft Anaf Gimel. I'm sorry, Anaf Bates. Ubamove Shiorim, and not only in the H. Chaim on a base, but in another Sefer, which belongs to the same set, written by the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital. He was tremendously many, and his Sforim, he wrote these unbelievable Sforim one after the other. So he wrote a big Sefer called the Moroi Shiorim. Literally the much called the interruption to all the introduction to all the gates. Moroi Shiorim, it's a separate work altogether, and that's divided into gateways. It's called the gateway, the lead into the gateways. Shar Aleph Perik base, right near the beginning of that work. Bariches, that he writes over there at considerable length. Dim hoyu meya me'erin seif shaloy alei di'akav hoyu kol ha'elamas b'shover. He said that if the Eibishter had literally shined forth, not through this concept of this kav that we call this line, then all of the worlds would have been equal. In other words, there would have been worlds, but they would have been all on the same level. And therefore, Nimshach HaKav, therefore the Eibishter caused that to be to reveal the kav, in order that there should be this concept of above and below, higher and lower, the Isha ha'ilon shemikavel me'alyena shel hakav hadovuk be'erin seif hu b'chinas maila. It's got in itself a higher state. Shemeya boy gila erin seif yoser. וכל מה שנמשך יעשה מדבקוסי ואין סעיף מסמעט הוער והוא בחינת מטו. In other words, what are the differences and what leads to Maila and what is called Maila? That the kav originally is dovuk in the Erin Seif, and as it goes down literally, then it depreciates, or I might call it, lessons in the gili of the Erin Seif. And therefore, as you go down, as to the higher olam, which is closer to the beginning of the kav, and has a greater revelation of the Erin Seif, it's called Maila. Else, as it is derived further downwards from that devekis that it had in the Erin, so from that cleavage to the Erin Seif, then the oil literally lessens, mismaet, and that's called mata. In other words, more Gilui Ein Seif is Maila, less Gilui Ein Seif is mata. But here we see the secret to the whole Inim. That he says that there's a Elyoinei Shel Kav, which is Dovuk, which is literally cloven into the Ein Seif, and that's what makes Maila. But that which is Nimshach, from further downwards, from that Devekis, from that cleavage in the Ein Seif, it becomes lessened and it becomes therefore Mata. So if we look carefully over there, both in the Movish Shiorim and in that particular honor base of the Eight Chaim, then they make the point, which is literally the key to understanding this little slightly magic box here, where he's talking about the union of Milo Mati in the derivation of that kav, and he describes it as being Dovuk Belyoinoi Shel Kav in the Erin Seif, and then as it goes down, then it's not so dovuk in the alien where the kav is dovuk, therefore it's less. So we see over there, he brings over there, and both in the Eitz Chaim and the Mavi Shorim, he brings the famous little diagram which you may have all seen. And that is that he draws a simple circle, and then inside the circle he's just got a kav coming from the top down into the circle, a straight line from the top down into the top of the circle down into the circle, but it doesn't reach the bottom of the circle. It just goes down into the circle and then finishes at any given point inside the what do you call the circumference of the circle. So that means that the kav is cloven to the circle at the top, but it is not cloven to the circle at the bottom. And that is the secret to the whole thing. In other words, that everything outside that circle is what's called the Ein Sof. That's the Ein Sof, what the Eibishter was mayor prior to the whole Tzimtzum, and that's the simplicity of the Ein Sof, and it is absolutely Ein Sof, and all of the possible descriptive terminologies that we could find, infinite, absolutely simple, and absolutely all the possible descriptive terms. So what the Tzimtzum did was cause literally, once again, we're not to form any Gashmistic ideas here, it caused literally a circle. It withdrew in a circular form. And so the Ein Sof now is all sort of surrounding, like based on a circular, like circumference, around this cavity. And this cavity has now become like a vacuum with the revelation of the Ein Sof. So what the Eibusha does now is he reveals into that cavity, from the Ein Sof, and we saw yesterday, not exactly the Ein Sof the way it is, but a ha'ora b'bak. Well, I don't know what we didn't learn yesterday, but on Sunday. But we trust that everybody remembers it intimately from one class to the other. Also upon him that it goes down into the cavity, and it only goes down into the cavity, but doesn't reach the other end of the circle. Now it's obvious why it can't do that, because if it reached down and went and joined up with the circle, at the bottom, then it couldn't really be a kav, because it would be joined up to the Ein Sof, both at the top and the bottom, so it would be just involved into the Ein Sof. It would never really be able to form what we call maila or mata. Since it doesn't go down and join up at the end, it's only at one end, behind the higher point, that it's joined up to the Ein Sof. But that's the secret of maila or mata, meaning as it goes down, then it's less joined. The further you go down, the less you are close to the joining point. So those that are mamish close to the joining point, if they get a closeness to the Ein Sof, which means that more Ein Sof which is mitgaleh to them than it is as you go further down. In other words, that the kav is made in such a way that he goes from level to level. He goes literally further down, in the sense that the closer you are, the more you have gilui in the kav. The further you go down, the less you have. And that's why he was to touch again at the bottom, he wouldn't be able to have it, because he would just reabsorb into the Ein Sof, because then he wouldn't be able to have this whole seder of him going from level to level, status-wise, as we go downward. So that's the secret. What the Eitz Chaim says over there, the Mavi Shorim, that he's what we call the beginning of the concept of maila u mata. And the union of maila u mata is measured by the closeness to the vacants of the kav in the Ein Sof outside the circle, embodied in the circle. And the closer you're there, the more you have literally from the circle, or from the embodied in the circle. As you go in, you go further away literally. And going further away means literally that you're getting less revelation. In other words, you're going step by step downwards.
You're getting less and less, but nevertheless you're still getting closer to the other side of the circle.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, because you're never going to touch it.
Even
So the fact that you get closer doesn't mean anything. Because what it means is that when we say that the Elyon is Yeser, they're more in the middle, then it means that the descent is a going down one, which means that the further you go down in the curve, then the less you've got revelation. You follow? So it doesn't matter how close you get to the other side, as long as you don't touch it, you don't feel it.
So
you're getting less and less awareness of that. You understand? But if the cow were to bang into back in, then it would be full from both sides, and then it would be difficult to have this whole concept of milomat. So it doesn't really matter how far you go into the circle. That's why I didn't make a big issue out of that. The nakuda is that as you go down, you're literally lessening your connection with the tada elyon. And so since you're lessening your connection, and therefore as you go down you get less revelation of the original oil. And therefore that's called mato, and we got more revelation, more closeness to the elyon of the cow, and therefore more closeness to the original oil. So therefore you have more literally revelation, and that's called milo. Now that's called milo, and that's called mato. So that's the nakuda of the cow. In other words,
so if the creation is just a reflection of a reflection,
so we didn't get to creation yet.
Oh,
we didn't get to creation.
So the cow is not a creation?
The cow is not the creation. No. The cow is not the creation yet. The creation only after Malchus Tatzilas. That's already quite a way down in the cow, according to the Alter Rebbe and the Arizal and other places. That's the end of the cow.
So what is the cow then?
So the cow is Gilel Kuz into the Olamas, but not Begolui by him in the latter three Olamas, Bria Yitzirah. It's already in the cow Gubra Helam when I get to those three Olamas.
So it's not a creation, it's not something Hashem made.
Right. Excuse me, are you reading something now?
This is the map.
Huh? Where did you get this map?
From Rabbi Wurzburg.
Who?
Rabbi Wurzburg in Hadar Torah.
Oh, yeah, show it to me.
It helps me understand what's going on. Or at least try to.
No. No, it's not bad. Oh, it's not really, not really together in your name. Umamela. That's a nakuda. It's the whole concept is, and that's what he goes on now to say, if we read what he reads now, he brings now a little bit further, then we'll be able to understand what the concept of the cow is achieving. We'll still come to the creation, don't worry about it, we'll get to the creation. And therefore, he says, that the Inyan of Milo Mata is now the closeness to the cow, and Mamela the Gilel Kushaboy, or the lessness of the closeness to the Bachinus and Yaina of the cow. And therefore that's called Mata. V'chein says the Rebbe, the whole Sphira Usphira. The truth is not just from one oilam to the other, but even in every Sphira, you got the high aspect of that Sphira, which is called the Chochma Shaboy, then you got Bina Shabbat, and then you got the Chesed, the Gura, and the Tiferes. They're already midas, but midas are not better to the Inyan of Chochma. So that means that within every Sphira you've got this Yerida, and this descent. You've got the Tada Maila and the Tada Amata. The Sphira Shem Chol Olam Sheish B'hem Gam Kei Maila Amata, and that's also Alidei HaKav, Bo'ifin Giluyov, the whole Sphira U Sphira. And that depends on the gilu of the cow in every Sphira. In other words, everything is dependent on this cow. According to the way it gives forth its revelation in any detail, well, that's what that detail will have. Either it will be more elevated or less elevated, or it will be in a form of moichin, what moichin have a more revelation, or it will be in a form of midas, or in a form of neta, etc., etc., each of which has more open gilui divinity or less. And so it's common to every detail in the whole Seder of the Olam. Not that the Olam is one to the other, but every detail in the Olam has its own level. And that's all determined by this kav. In other words, that the kav determines how much Gilui Elokus there will be in every step on the way, as it were, down.
Is the Kav the Devar Hashem that's sustaining the world at every moment?
Yeah, but we didn't get that far yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the same side of the road. We didn't get that far yet. אומר לי זה בכל מה שנמשך יויסה מדבקוסי בערב סייב. בכל על ידי הקו, פריחן גילוי בכל ספירה וספירה. וכמיש כוסו במובי שיעורים שום, like it's written over there in that chapter in the Sefer Movi Shiurim. Or b'mokim acher, and it's also mavua in other places. So when the Rebbe says mokim acher, he means in Siddur. Not only just in the Kabbalah of the Arizal, but also within Siddur Chabad. Umishum zeh, and due to that, v'hechreiach she'yeh lem kadimo zeh lo zeh b'oivin hashfiros. Shehu b'china elyoino, one is a higher, v'nikru maila, he kedumo, that is literally primordial or prior, v'yisaruso v'yizgaluso, ala madrega hata. Now, here's another step forward now. This is already another spora which also needs, if we're going to say that the kav goes now, after its revelation, into the Mokim Ponui, the kav now goes deliberately from one level to the other, and it's all determined by this kav, and the kav is determined by the closeness to the, what it's called in the result, the igul, to the circle, to literally the area of the Ein Sefer Mamish. Then it follows that what's happening is a step-by-step gradation, where every step in the derivation of the kav is a further determination how much oil is going to be revealed. Right? And the amount of oil which will be revealed at that particular step, on the part of the kav, is going to be different than the one before it, and it's going to be different in the sense that it will be already further hidden. It won't be as openly revealed as the previous one. And that was it, that we have to say that it now goes with a Seder. We have to say that since the kav is made in such a way that every step is going to be a further, literally, kaviochel, a decision or arrangement of how much oil is going to come forth, then it's like as if we're going, and then we reveal, and then we go, and we reveal, and we go, and we reveal. That means to say that there's, even though we can't really talk about time at this point, because as we saw in the previous Maimonides, the infant time only begins in the Elam Biyah Mamish. And that's when you get Mamish into the Inim of Otzei V'Shoiv, which comes about the Hamshach of the earth into, due to the Hamshach of the earth, into Elam Bri Yitzir V'Ashiyah V'Churu. So we can't, at this particular point, we're talking even before Achila, we're talking even before Kachi, we're talking way up at the first Iskalis at the Ein Seif after the Tzimtzum. Then because of Zikra, we can't talk about time. However, we can talk about what's called Kedima Ve'ichur, meaning not in time, but in level, and almost like in proceeding. There's one level, and then another one underneath it, literally, which is less, primordial than the one before it. In other words, like they go down step by step, where literally one precedes the other. So we can't say that one precedes